Today we are going to talk about cell membrane. Cell membrane is also called the plasma membrane, which envelops the cell. It is a thin, pliable, elastic structure and only 7.5 to 10 nanometer thick. It is composed of proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. The approximate composition of these are: protein is 55%, phospholipids are 25%, cholesterol is 13%, other lipids constitute 4%, and carbohydrates are only 3%. Now, structure of the cell membrane. Structure of the cell membrane as shown in this figure, it is composed mainly of a lipid bilayer of phospholipid molecules, but with large numbers of protein molecules protruding through the layer. Also, carbohydrate moieties are attached to the protein molecules on the outside of membrane and to additional protein molecules on the inside. The basic lipid bilayer is composed of phospholipid molecules. One end of each phospholipid molecule is soluble in water, that is called hydrophilic end. Other end is soluble only in the fats, that is hydrophobic end. Now, lipids of the cell membrane. Lipids, they impede water penetration. Basic structure of the cell membrane is lipid bilayer, which is a thin, double-layered film of lipids continuous over the entire cell surface. Large globular protein molecules are interspersed in this lipid film. Lipid bilayer composition. The basic lipid bilayer is composed of phospholipid molecules. One end of each phospholipid molecule is soluble in water, that is called hydrophilic end. Other end is soluble only in the fats, that is hydrophobic end. Lipid layer in middle of the membrane is impermeable to usual water-soluble substances. Now, water-soluble substances are ions, glucose and urea, and fat-soluble substances include oxygen, carbon dioxide and alcohol. These can penetrate this portion of the membrane with ease. Now, proteins. Proteins are of two types, integral and peripheral proteins. These are membrane proteins, most of which are glycoprotein. Integral proteins protrude all the way through the membrane, while peripheral proteins are attached only surface of membrane and do not penetrate all the way through. Now, function of the proteins. Integral proteins provide structural channels or pores through which water molecules and water-soluble substances can diffuse between extracellular and intracellular fluids. These proteins also act as carrier proteins. Some protein acts as enzymes, other proteins acts as receptors for water-soluble chemicals such as peptide hormones. In this way, integral proteins spanning the cell membrane provide a means of conveying information about the environment to the cell interior. Peripheral proteins functions as enzymes or as a controller of transport of substances through the cell membrane pores. Now, at the end are membrane carbohydrates, also called the cell glycocalyx, occur almost invariably in combination of proteins or lipids in the form of either glycoprotein or glycolipids. In fact, most of integral proteins are glycoprotein. Glycoportion of these molecules are protrude to the outside of cell. Other carbohydrates like proteoglycan are loosely attached to the outer surface of cell as well. So the entire outside surface of the cell often has a loose carbohydrate core called glycocalyx. Functions of the carbohydrates. These are attached outer surface of cell. Number one function is many of having negative electric charge, give negative charge, surface charge that repels the negative objects. Glycocalyx of some cells attaches to the glycocalyx of other cells, attaching cells to one another. Many acts as receptors for binding hormones such as insulin. Some carbohydrates moieties enter into immune reactions.